I don't know exactly when we went past our breaking point. Was it when this all started? Or when things got worse? Either way it happened. There isn't much else I can describe about what's transpired here after the incident with the priest, other than a complete and total loss of sanity. I think I was the first one to really lose it. Lack of sleep, trying to keep Marcy as comfortable as possible, and trying to keep a straight face myself despite the circumstances were likely the main cause. But the moment that really made me start to question everything was around lunchtime yesterday. I've had to resort to a liquid diet for Marcy because of the way that she's fused to the wall. She could only barely open her mouth on the left side, and I'm feeding her with a straw. For the most part, when this happens, she's quiet and cooperative because she's hungry. But yesterday something different happened. "Mommy, why did they do it?" she whispered as she took another sip from the hot broth. "Do what, sweetie?" I asked. "The walls. They changed the color." "Why did they change the color?" I frowned and ran the back of my palm against her forehead to check if she had a fever. I muttered, "Baby, what are you talking about?" "In the upstairs bedroom. They covered it up." "I don't know why they did it," she complained. She seemed tired, so I kissed her head and told her I was going to take a nap. Stan came to be beside her as I gently walked up the stairs, pondering over what she had told me. Eventually I found myself standing outside of Stan's office, the upstairs bedroom that Marcy had been talking about. As I stared into the room, I thought back to when we first bought this house. The realtor had suggested that if we ever wanted to expand our family, that the room could be a great nursery. Why had she said that? I stepped into the room and stared at the walls, the patterns that were decorating them, before finally deciding to rip it all off. As I began to tear it down, I heard sharp sounds from downstairs. Then Stan was running up the stairs like a wild man. "The fuck are you doing?" he said as he burst into the room. I kept stripping off the wallpaper and ignoring him as he grabbed my hand and forced me to look at him face to face. "Have you lost your mind? While you're here dismantling the house, our little girl is downstairs crying because she said she feels it, like you're peeling her skin off. We agreed not to do anything like this." I pulled away from him and said in a shaky voice, "What else am I supposed to do? I'm trying to figure out what this fucking house wants. It's not like I can talk to the walls." Stan relaxed and held me for a moment as I broke down and dropped some of the wallpaper I was holding. "I'm sorry. I overreacted. I'm sure whatever you're doing was intended to help her," he admitted as he squinted his eyes and looked past me on the wall. He let go of me for a moment and went toward it, gently peeling the wallpaper off to reveal what appeared to be a measuring chart of some kind. "What is that?" he asked. I examined it as well and realized it was the scribblings of a child's hand on the wall with the name Jasper Hunt, age 10. "Did you know that was back there?" Stan asked. I shook my head and replied, "Marcy was talking about it like she knew, but I don't see how that's possible." He examined it closely, and I could see his brain firing to figure out what to do with this new information. "Unless we really can talk to the walls," he realized. "Do you think the house is the one that was speaking to me?" I whispered. It sounded ridiculous to say, but given all that we had experienced, we couldn't rule anything out. "I think he's trying to tell us something." Stan paused, as he moved over to his desk and began to rifle through some files. "What are you looking for?" He slammed it closed and muttered to himself. "Thought I kept the info on the real estate agent. Damn, I can't find it anywhere." "It was Samantha something," I chimed in. Although my brain was so tired I couldn't imagine where he was going with this. He paused and he kissed my cheek and said, "I'm going to try and Google the info and get them on the phone. Maybe find out who the previous owners of the house were." "Okay. What do you want me to do?" I asked. He rubbed his chin for a moment, then directed me towards the stairs. "Keep Marcy talking. If the house can tell us anything else, it can help us get her out," he demanded. I nodded, sprinting down the stairs to where my little girl was whimpering and pulling her shirt up a tad to scratch at her belly. As I got closer, I could tell she was developing a rash of some kind. Hey baby, are you okay? I said as I sat alongside her. Mommy, why do you keep hurting me? She asked, as tears streamed down her face. She could barely even get the words out. Just to hear her say that made me feel like I wanted to die. I touched her cheek and smiled gently. Oh no, baby, no. We don't want to hurt you. We want to help you. I found what was under the walls. It was another little boy who used to live here and draw on the walls too, I said. Did the walls eat him too? She asked anxiously. I didn't know the answer to that question, and the fact that she asked it made me even more terrified. I bit my lip and I came up with a lie, wondering when the house would use our daughter to speak next. No, baby, he's okay. His name was Jasper. I'm sure his family moved before we came here, I said softly. Why is he eating me? Marcy asked, fumbling to find the words as she looked at the wall. I'm sorry, she said with trembling lips as she touched the wall with her free hand. Stan was at the edge of the hall with a grim look on his face that told me he had bad news. The realtor that sold us this place doesn't work at the company anymore, and they don't really have any files on hand about the previous owners, he whispered as I joined him. What? Nothing? Not even a forward address? All the agent can tell me for sure is this property has been in the market for 6 years. We got it at a reduced price because it wasn't selling. I covered my mouth, realizing that such a simple thing could have horrific implications now. Had the wall actually consumed poor little Jasper too? Has she told you anything yet? Only that she's scared, and that I don't know how the house communicates yet. I paused and sighed deeply, trying not to lose it. Are we even listening to ourselves? I said in exasperation. Are we really expecting this house to talk to us? It exhausted traditional means. Medicine isn't working. Machinery won't break down the wall. And we saw that priest disappear before our eyes. We can't deny this is real. As though to prove his point, he walked over to the wall and began to bark a few commands. Listen to me. I know you can hear me because what you've done to my daughter. She's innocent, you hear me? I demand you take me instead. Of course, there was no response. Instead, Marcy only complained that her pain was returning and she felt itchy again. Still, I don't know what that meant in the connection to the house, but Stan was growing frustrated. What do you want from us? I swear to God, answer me now before I fucking burn you to the ground. Now that evoked a response from the wall, or rather Marcy, as she screamed again and yelled, It's pulling me! I instantly grabbed at her arm. No, please don't! He didn't mean it, I begged. Marcy's right nostril was now within the wall, and all of her right eye. Only a sliver of her mouth was out enough for her to cry to us. Then it seemed to stop, and I shoved Stan back. Are you crazy? Do you want to lose her altogether? He ignored me and went back to his office. I stood there for a moment, comforting Marcy. And I even gently touched the wall and muttered an apology. Please, just tell us what you want. We'll do it, anything. Just please let our little girl go. I slumped to the floor, and I kept staring at the paneling, expecting any sort of response. But neither Marcy nor the wall were showing any signs of talking. Was it angry because of Stan's threat? I went upstairs to confront him again. He was in his office searching for something amid our many boxes that we never got around to sorting, and I muttered, Stan, I know this sounds crazy, but we have to try to appease the house. We've tried that. We can't bring back the old residents. So I'm tired of compromising with a fucking demon, he said as he finally found what he was looking for. It was a sledgehammer. Stan, what are you doing? It thinks I'm bluffing. I'll show it what real pain is, he said. His face told me that he was serious, but I could see pain and anger in his eyes. He wasn't thinking this through. He walked back downstairs to the den. You can't. You said it yourself. It'll hurt her more than it helps. We know that some parts of the house can be hurt. If this thing wants to survive, it's going to have to start cooperating, he snarled as he turned to the wall and began to smash it apart. Instantly, Marcy began to holler. We could see that it was causing her little body to seize up. Don't do this! I'm not stopping until it lets her go, Stan said firmly. You hear that? I'm fucking tearing you down! I ran downstairs, desperate to try to hold on to Marcy before the wall started pulling again. If you keep this up, she'll be gone, I screamed. It's her or the house. If it takes her, I won't stop until the whole place is rubble. I squeezed my daughter's hand, trying to keep her from feeling the pain, but instead of pulling her further into the wall, the house had a different response this time. I could see it happening even before she started to make a sound. Something was moving under her skin. It was a small, gentle ripple against her arm before I realized that it was an insect, a termite, burrowing its way out of my daughter's arm. And before I knew what was happening, more of the insects began to dig themselves out of her body in different places. Stand, stop! I shouted at the top of my lungs. This time, my husband listened. He dropped the sledgehammer and fell to his knees as he saw the termite swarm that was now invading our little girl's body. Dear Jesus, he muttered, as he hurried to clean her off and get the insects away, but who knew how many of them were still inside of her? Another few minutes passed with nothing but Marcy's gentle sobs. Eventually she fell asleep, and Stan and I stood there, broken, defeated by the house. Why is this happening? My husband asked, as he got down on his knees and started to plead with the house. I don't know what you want. I'm sorry, I want my daughter back. Please, for the love of all that's holy in the world, please give me a sign, he said. I squeezed his hand and we waited there, trying to see if anything would happen. Instead, it was just more silence. Stan stood up, shaking his head as he prepared to go back upstairs. Mama, do you feel that? Marcy whispered as we stood up. She looked confused but not frightened. I looked toward her. Feel what, sweetie? It felt like something pushing its way out, she said. And that was when I noticed it. I approached the wall and reached my hand out to touch the gentle ripples in the pattern. There were 5 of them, all together, jutting out from the wall about 6 feet from where Marcy was stuck. As I watched, in awestruck horror, the wall began to peel away and showed what appeared to be 5 little fingers sticking out. Hey there once again, kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I wanted to tell you thank you so much for watching tonight's video, or, listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. This is the same thing I say at the end of every video all the time, so I think it kind of goes without saying that I appreciate you, and I appreciate you guys sticking around. We're moving into some of the hottest months of the year, which means that it's probably a good thing if some of you guys start to cool down a bit. A great way to do that, iced tea, sweet iced tea. I'm from Texas, is what we do. And my wife sells tea. Etsy.com/shop/ivorymonocletea to get a whole bunch of different kinds of teas, even creepypasta-based teas. And if you ask for the MCP dabbing sticker, you get a special one that nobody else gets. And as always, I want to give a very huge thank you to all of my supporters out there on Patreon. I say this every time, but I truly mean it. You guys are the real MVPs, and without you, I don't think I would be able to continue doing this at the capacity that I do. Especially not as many brand new custom stories as we've been getting just for the channel. So a very special thank you to Jacob Shaffer, Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Bryon Arce, Ken Lando Higuchi, Bobby Karman, Stephanie Butler, Tristain Pelton, Chase Burnett, Diana Kraus, Nessie, Ronny Hansson, Blitzscreed, BardoHawk764, TheBananaMafia 1, Hollow Hero, Ferb, Harley, Billy Morrow, Katie Birch, Sashi Sazaku, Kayden the Spooky Boy, MyBodySoundsLikeRiceKrispys, Ashwood, Lord of the Weebs, Jay, Thea Lockett, Miss Exandra, Suji Campbell, Stricken, Ozreen Fox, Robert White, Legit Quadfeed, Fried Chicken 12, James Bruce, Freddy Krueger, Ty Nanny, Infernal One, James Lowe, Lisa Cottrell, Caspian, Jordan Ells, Hades' Nephew, Tater Chip, Acid System, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Cryptic Nightmares, Kiri the Sloth, Tommy Green, Sky Harbor, Caleb Dougal, Nina Smith, Nico Kyle, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, Trace Miles, and Corey Kenshin. Thank you guys once again so much, and if you would like to join this list of people's names that I mispronounce, or the list of people's names that are down there in the description, check out patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta, and as always, a very sweet dreams to all of you. Good night, folks.